The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was older than most stars. Its walls were made of black stone that absorbed light, and its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds sat in floating chairs, arranged in circles that rose upward like the inside of a massive bowl. Today, they had gathered to discuss the conquest of a small blue planet called Earth. Elder moved slowly to the speaking platform. His body was made of living crystal, clear and ancient, and light bent strangely around him as he walked. He had lived for 12,000 years. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had seen species evolve from animals to gods and then destroy themselves in wars they could not win. He had also seen what happened when fools ignored the old laws. "Before we vote," said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, "I must remind this council of something important." Commander made a sound of annoyance. He was a massive creature standing 3 meters tall, covered in thick plates of natural armor. His species, the Dominion, had conquered 43 worlds. They were the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known, and was their finest commander. "We have heard your objections," Elder said. "The humans are primitives. They have no space fleet. They have no planetary shields. They still use chemical rockets and burn dead plants for energy. This conquest will take less than 1 rotation of their world." Did not respond to the commander. Instead, he raised one crystalline hand, and the air above the platform began to glow. Ancient words appeared, written in a language so old that most beings in the chamber could not read it. "This law was carved into the foundation of this very building," said. "It was written by the first council 60,000 years ago. It has never been changed. It has never been questioned. Until today." He translated the words for those who could not read them. "Never fight the soft ones in the jungle." Silence fell over the chamber. Some of the older delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew the stories. They remembered. But laughed. It was a harsh sound like metal scraping against stone. "Soft ones," he repeated. "Yes, I have seen the reports. Humans are indeed soft. They have no armor, no claws, no venom. They cannot even survive in their own planet's oceans. They must wrap themselves in dead animal skins just to stay warm." He stepped forward, his massive feet shaking the platform. "My soldiers are bred for war. Their bones are reinforced with metal grown inside their bodies. Their blood carries healing agents that can close wounds in seconds. They can see heat, hear heartbeats, and smell fear from a distance of 100 meters. He spread his arms wide. "What chance do soft, fragile humans have against us?" Remained still. When he spoke again, his voice was very quiet. "Where do you plan to land, Commander?" Turned to the tactical display that floated beside him. A blue and green planet appeared, spinning slowly. He pointed to a region near the center of the largest landmass. "Here," he said, "a region the humans call Southeast Asia. Our analysts have identified it as ideal for our purposes. Warm climate, dense plant growth for cover during landing, low population density, and most importantly, it contains a small nation that will offer minimal resistance." "Which nation?" asked. "They call it Vietnam." Several things happened at once. The oldest members of the council rose from their seats and began moving toward the exits. They said nothing. They did not look back. They simply left as quickly as their various bodies would allow. A delegate from a species called the Remnant, one of the few races that had encountered humans before and survived, began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone watching a child reach toward an open flame. An elder sat down heavily, as if all the strength had left his ancient body. "What is this?" demanded. "Why do you flee? Why do you laugh?" The remnant delegate controlled his laughter long enough to speak. "Commander, my people once ruled an empire that spanned 300 systems. We were powerful. We were proud. And 60 years ago, we sent a small force to Earth to collect specimens for study." He paused, and his many eyes grew distant with memory. "We landed in Vietnam. We thought it would be simple. We thought the jungle would hide us while we worked." "What happened?" asked. "We never found out," the remnant said. "None of our soldiers survived long enough to tell us. We sent 5,000 warriors into that jungle. We recovered 11, and those 11 never spoke again. They simply sat in silence until they died, their eyes staring at nothing, their mouths frozen in silent screams." Dismissed this with a wave of his armored hand. "Your species was weak, the Dominion is not." "The Dominion has never fought humans," said softly, "and the Dominion has certainly never fought them in a jungle." "Then we shall be the first to succeed," declared. "And when we do, this foolish old law can finally be removed from your precious walls." He turned to address the full council. "I ask for authorization to proceed with the conquest of Earth, beginning with the region of Vietnam. I will have the planet under our control within 30 planetary rotations. You have my word." The vote was called. The younger delegates, eager for the resources of a new world, voted in favor. The older ones abstained or voted against, but there were not enough of them to stop it. The authorization passed. As the council chamber emptied, remained in his seat, the remnant delegate approached him slowly. "Should we warn him?" the remnant asked. "Should we tell him what waits in that jungle?" Shook his crystalline head. "He would not believe us, they never do." "Then he will learn the truth the hard way." "Yes," agreed. "He will learn, and by the time he understands, it will be far too late." He looked up at the ancient law, still glowing above the platform. "The jungle remembers everything," he said. "Every invader, every army, every fool who thought they could conquer it, and the jungle never forgets." Outside, Commander was already giving orders to his fleet. 50,000 soldiers, 300 gunships, weapons that could level mountains. He did not know that he was about to make the worst mistake in the history of his species. He did not know that in a small country on a small planet, people were already watching the sky. The Dominion fleet broke through Earth's clouds on a hot morning in July. 50 massive ships descended like dark mountains falling from the sky. The sound of their engines shook the ground for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Birds fled, animals ran, and the people of Vietnam looked up and knew that war had come again. Commander watched the landing from the bridge of his command ship. Below him, the jungle spread out like a green ocean, thick and endless. His ships had flattened several kilometers of trees just by landing, leaving circles of broken wood and crushed earth. "Establish the forward base," ordered. "I want defensive walls up before nightfall. Send scout patrols into the surrounding area. Find the nearest human settlement and secure it." His officers moved quickly to obey. Within hours, a massive military base rose from the destroyed jungle. Metal walls surrounded it. Guard towers watched every direction. Sensors scanned for any movement within 5 kilometers. Felt satisfied. This was how wars were won, with superior force, with overwhelming power, with technology that the enemy could not match. For 3 days, everything went according to plan. The scout patrols found no resistance. The jungle was quiet. No human soldiers appeared to fight them. Began to think that the natives had simply fled in terror, abandoning their homes rather than face his army. On the 4th day, everything changed. A patrol of 20 soldiers went into the jungle at dawn. They were supposed to return by midday. When the sun reached its highest point, they had not returned. When the sun began to set, they still had not returned. Sent a message to their communicators, no response. He sent a signal to their armor, which should have shown their location on his tactical display. The signals showed that all 20 soldiers were standing in the same spot, deep in the jungle, not moving. "They have found something," said. "Send a recovery team, full combat readiness." The recovery team consisted of 50 soldiers in heavy armor, supported by 2 gunships flying overhead. They reached the location in less than an hour. What they found made no sense. The 20 soldiers were gone. Their armor lay scattered across the jungle floor, broken open from the inside. The weapons were missing. The communicators had been crushed into small pieces, and there was no sign of the soldiers themselves. No bodies, no blood, nothing. Just the empty armor and a single word carved into a tree trunk. The word was written in the Dominion's own language, though no human should have been able to read it, let alone write it. The word was leave. Stared at the report for a long time. Primitives, he finally said. They think they can frighten us with tricks. He ordered the gunships to burn the jungle. For 6 hours, they poured fire onto the green sea, turning thousands of trees into ash. The smoke rose so high that it could be seen from space. The heat was so intense that the ground itself turned to glass in some places. When the fires died, sent soldiers to search the burned area. They found nothing, no hidden bases, no buried tunnels, no bodies, not even bones. They escaped, his second-in-command said. They must have fled before the fire reached them. Did not like this explanation, but he accepted it. What else could it be? That night the base was locked down. Every sensor was active. Every guard was alert. Every entrance was watched by soldiers with weapons ready. In the morning, 17 soldiers were missing from inside the base. They had been sleeping in their quarters, surrounded by their companions. The companions had heard nothing, seen nothing. The sensors had detected nothing. The guards had reported nothing. But 17 beds were empty, and 17 soldiers were gone. The search teams found them at the edge of the jungle, where the burned ground met the living trees. They were hanging from the branches, their armor opened, their bodies arranged in a perfect line. They were still alive, but something had been done to them. Their eyes were open, but they did not see. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out, and on their chests the same word had been carved into their skin. Leave. Ordered the survivors brought to the medical bay. The doctors examined them for hours, but could find nothing wrong with their bodies. Their minds, however, were gone. Whatever they had seen in the night had broken something inside them that could not be fixed. That evening, as the sun set and the jungle grew dark, a strange sound drifted across the base. It was music, but not like any music the Dominion had ever heard. It was soft and sad, made by some kind of wooden instrument. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The soldiers grew nervous. They gripped their weapons. They watched the shadows between the trees. Find that sound, ordered. Send drones, send scouts. Find whoever is making it and kill them. The drones flew into the jungle. One by one, their signals disappeared. The scouts followed. They did not return. The music continued until dawn. On the 5th day, received a message from his ship's computer. One of the recovered pieces of armor had contained a small recording device that had not been destroyed. He played the recording. It showed the patrol walking through the jungle. The soldiers were calm, professional. Their weapons were ready. Their sensors were scanning. Then, without any warning, the soldier at the back of the line simply vanished. One moment he was there. The next moment the jungle had swallowed him. No sound, no struggle, just gone. The other soldiers did not notice. They kept walking forward. One by one, they disappeared. The jungle took them so quietly that even the soldiers right next to them did not realize what was happening. By the time the last soldier understood what was happening, he was alone. He turned in circles, his weapon firing at nothing. He screamed for help that would never come. And then hands reached out from the ground itself. Human hands, covered in mud, grabbing his legs. More hands came from the trees, more from the bushes. Dozens of hands pulling him down into the earth. The recording ended. Watched it again and again and again. He could not understand what he was seeing. The humans had not used any technology. No weapons, no vehicles, just their hands and the jungle itself. How was this possible? Outside, the sun was setting again. The jungle was growing dark, and somewhere in that darkness, the music began to play once more. Realized for the first time that he might have made a terrible mistake. Deep beneath the jungle floor, in tunnels that had been dug by hands long dead, a small group of fighters prepared for war. The tunnels were old. Some had been dug during the war against the Americans 60 years ago. Others were older still, from the war against the French. And some were so ancient that no one remembered who had made them or why. The tunnels connected to each other in ways that made no sense to outsiders. A hole that looked barely large enough for a child could lead to a chamber that held 50 people. A dead end could hide a secret passage to a river 3 kilometers away. The jungle above was a maze, but the jungle below was a labyrinth. Sung sat in one of these underground chambers, checking his equipment by the light of a small oil lamp. He was 22 years old, born in Korea, trained as a soldier. He had come to Vietnam 6 months ago as part of a volunteer force, young men and women who believed that when the aliens came, humans needed to stand together. Now the aliens were here, and Sung was about to learn if his training meant anything. Sergeant Du entered the chamber through a tunnel so narrow that he had to crawl on his belly to pass through it. He was 50 years old, thin and hard like dried wood. He had fought in 3 wars and had scars on his body from weapons that no longer existed. Behind him came others, young men and women from a dozen countries, all of them volunteers, all of them willing to fight. Some carried rifles, some carried knives, some carried only their hands and their courage. A young woman named was the last to enter. She was 19, a medic, with gentle eyes and steady hands. She had joined the volunteers because she believed that healing was as important as fighting. She sat next to Sung and gave him a small smile. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Yes," Sung admitted, "but I was afraid before every test in school too. I always did better when I was a little afraid." Du gathered everyone around the oil lamp. He spread a piece of cloth on the ground and drew a map on it with a piece of charcoal. "The enemy base is here," he said, pointing to a circle he had drawn. "They have built walls around it and burned the jungle for 1 kilometer in every direction. They think this makes them safe." He smiled, and his teeth were yellow in the lamplight. "They are wrong." He drew lines leading to the circle from all directions. "These are the tunnels, the old ones from the wars before. The aliens do not know about them. Their machines cannot see them. The tunnels go under the burned ground, under their walls, under their buildings." A young man named One raised his hand. He was Korean like Sung, only 19 years old. "How do we kill them?" he asked. "Their armor stops bullets. We tested it on the ones we captured. Even heavy weapons barely scratch the surface." Du reached into his bag and pulled out a simple tool. It was a bamboo stake, about 30 centimeters long, sharpened to a fine point. The tip was covered in something dark and sticky. "This," Du said, "is older than any weapon the aliens have ever seen. It is a stake, covered in poison. The poison was made by the old women in the village, using plants that grow only in this jungle." He held the stake up so everyone could see it. "The aliens heal fast, cuts close. Broken bones mend, but this poison does not kill the body. It kills the mind. 1 scratch is enough. Within hours they will see things that are not there. They will hear voices that do not exist. They will fear shadows and attack their own friends." He put the stake back in his bag. "We do not need to kill them all. We just need to make them afraid. We need to make them question every shadow. We need to make them understand that this jungle does not belong to them." He looked around at the young faces watching him. "Our ancestors fought this way against the Chinese, against the French, against the Americans. against everyone who thought they could take our land by force, and we are still here, we are still free. He stood up. Tonight, we will teach these aliens what our ancestors taught every other invader. We will show them that the jungle itself is our weapon. The trees, the rivers, the mud, the darkness, all of it fights for us. Sung felt his heart beating fast in his chest. He thought about his family back in Korea, about the small apartment where he had grown up, about his mother's cooking and his father's quiet pride when he had graduated from military training. He wondered if he would ever see them again. Then he looked at her calm face and steady hands, and he felt something else. Not just fear, something stronger. Purpose. How do we get into the base? Sung asked. Du smiled again. There is a tunnel that comes up inside their medical building. They do not guard it well because they think the building is safe. We will enter there in small groups and spread out through the base. And then we become ghosts. We move through shadows. We take their soldiers one by one, silently, without warning. We leave their equipment scattered. We leave messages carved in their language. We make them understand that nowhere is safe. He paused. We do not fight like an army. Armies can be defeated. We fight like the jungle. The jungle cannot be defeated. It can only be survived. Outside, far above them, the sun was setting. The aliens were preparing for another night of fear. And in the tunnels below, 100 fighters were preparing to become shadows. Sung checked his equipment one more time. A knife, a bamboo stake, a small radio, a mask to cover his face. Touched his arm. Stay close to me, she said. If you get hurt, I will take care of you. And if you get hurt? Sung asked. She smiled. Then you will have to carry me. Sergeant Du gave the signal. One by one, the fighters began to move through the tunnels, crawling toward the enemy base. Above them, the aliens waited behind their walls, surrounded by their sensors and their guards and their advanced technology. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea that the ground beneath their feet was hollow, filled with ghosts that did not fear death. They had no idea that this jungle had been swallowing invaders for 1,000 years, and it was still hungry. Tonight, the lesson would begin. Commander had stopped sleeping. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. In that time, he had lost 2,000 soldiers, not to battles. There had been no battles, just disappearances, just silence, just the endless, maddening sound of that wooden instrument playing somewhere in the darkness. His soldiers had begun to break. The mighty warriors of the Dominion, bred for combat across 100 worlds, now refused to leave their quarters at night. They jumped at shadows. They fired their weapons at sounds that did not exist. Some had attacked their own companions, screaming about hands reaching up from the ground. The medical bay was full, not with wounded soldiers, but with soldiers whose minds had shattered. They sat in rows, staring at walls, whispering words in languages they should not have known. Stood in his command center, staring at the tactical display. Red dots marked the locations where soldiers had vanished. There were so many red dots now that parts of the map looked like they were bleeding. His second-in-command, a veteran named, approached him carefully. Sir, the soldiers are asking questions. They want to know when we will receive support from the fleet. Did not answer immediately. The truth was that he had sent 17 requests for additional troops. The council had all of them. The humans are primitives, the council had replied. You have 50,000 soldiers, use them. But he did not have 50,000 soldiers anymore. He had fewer than 40,000 now, and that number dropped every night. Tell them support is coming, lied. Tell them to hold their positions. Hesitated. Sir, there is something else. We captured a piece of equipment from one of the incidents last night. He held out a small wooden tube. It looked like a child's toy, simple and rough. What is this? Asked. We believe it is the source of the music. One of the sentries managed to grab it before he was taken. Examine the tube. It was hollow, with small holes cut into its surface. A simple instrument made from a plant that grew in the jungle. How could something so primitive create such fear in his soldiers? He threw the instrument against the wall, where it shattered into pieces. "I want double guards tonight," he ordered. "Every entrance, every building. No one sleeps until dawn." That night walked through the base himself, checking on his soldiers. They looked at him with eyes that held no hope. They gripped their weapons like children holding blankets, seeking comfort that would not come. At midnight, the lights went out. Every light in the base died at the same moment. The emergency generators did not activate. The backup systems did not respond. Darkness fell like a heavy curtain. Heard screaming in the distance, then weapons fire, then more screaming. He tried to activate his communicator. Nothing. His armor systems were dead. Even the small light built into his helmet would not turn on. "Stay calm," he shouted into the darkness. "Form defensive positions, watch each other's backs." But his soldiers could not hear him. The darkness had swallowed his voice along with everything else. Then the music began. It came from everywhere at once, from above, from below, from inside the walls themselves. That haunting melody played on wooden instruments by hands that could not be seen. And with the music came the shadows. Saw them moving at the edge of his vision. Human shapes covered in mud and leaves slipping between buildings like water flowing through cracks. They made no sound. They left no trace. They were there and then they were gone, and another soldier was missing. He grabbed a weapon from a fallen soldier and fired into the darkness. The flash of light revealed nothing, just empty ground, just silent buildings, just the music playing on and on. A hand touched his shoulder. Spun around, ready to kill. A human face looked up at him. A young man, barely more than a boy, with mud covering his features and eyes that held no fear. The young man smiled. Then he was gone, melting back into the shadows as if he had never existed. Felt something wet on his arm. He looked down. A small cut, barely visible, had appeared on his wrist. His armor had been opened just enough to let a blade through, then closed again. He stared at the cut for a long moment. Then he began to see things. The ground opened up beneath him, revealing tunnels that stretched down forever. Hands reached up from the darkness, thousands of hands grabbing at his legs. Faces appeared in the walls, the faces of every soldier he had lost, their mouths open in silent screams. Ran. He did not know where he was going. He did not care. He just needed to escape, to get away from the hands and the faces and the music that would not stop. He burst through a door and found himself outside the base, standing at the edge of the jungle. The trees rose before him like a wall of darkness, their branches reaching toward him like fingers. In the trees he saw movement, hundreds of shapes watching him, waiting. A voice spoke from the darkness. It used his own language, though no human should have known it. "Now you understand." Fell to his knees. "What are you?" he whispered. "We are the jungle," the voice replied. "We are the earth. We are the memory of every invader who came before you and never left." The shapes in the trees grew closer. "Your soldiers will live," the voice continued. "They will help us rebuild what you destroyed, and you will carry a message back to your council." Looked up. The young man from before stood in front of him, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. "What message?" asked. The young man knelt down so their eyes were level. "Tell them the law is real. Tell them the jungle does not forget. Tell them that if they ever return, we will be waiting, and next time there will be no survivors to carry messages." Behind him, the first light of dawn began to appear. The music stopped. The shadows faded. And Commander, the greatest military leader of the Dominion, knelt in the mud and wept. The message arrived at the Galactic Council 6 weeks after the invasion of Earth had begun. Every delegate in the Great Chamber gathered to watch. Even Elder, who rarely attended meetings anymore, had come to see the end of the story he had tried to prevent. The holographic display flickered to life, and Commander appeared before them. The delegates gasped. This was not the proud warrior who had stood in this very chamber and demanded permission to conquer Earth. This was a broken creature, kneeling in mud, his armor stripped away, his body thin and damaged. Behind him stood a line of humans. They were covered in dirt and leaves, their faces calm, their eyes watchful. They held no weapons that the council could see. They did not need to. A young man stepped forward. He was small by Dominion standards, barely reaching his chest. His face was streaked with mud, and his clothes were simple, made from rough fabric. But his eyes held something that made several delegates look away. Something old, something patient, something that had seen empires rise and fall and rise again. The young man spoke in Galactic Standard. His pronunciation was not perfect, but his meaning was clear. My name is Sung. I speak for the fighters of Vietnam. I speak for the people of Earth. He paused, looking directly into the recording device as if he could see the thousands of beings watching him across the stars. We did not ask for this war. We did not want this war. Your commander came to our land with 50,000 soldiers and weapons that could destroy cities. He thought we would surrender. He thought we would run. Sung smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not friendly either. It was the smile of someone who had learned things that could not be unlearned. He was wrong. He gestured at the jungle behind him. This land has been invaded many times, by neighbors who wanted our rice, by kingdoms who wanted our coast, by empires who wanted our people as slaves, by nations with ships and guns and machines of war. He paused. We are still here, they are not. Sung walked around, who remained kneeling, his head bowed. Your commander is the only survivor of his army. We are returning him to you as proof that your invasion has failed. The rest of his soldiers are alive, but they will stay here. They will help us rebuild the villages they destroyed. They will plant trees to replace the ones they burned. They will learn what happens when you try to take something that does not belong to you. He stopped in front of the recording device again. We know about your law, the old law written by your ancestors. Never fight the soft ones in the jungle. Your ancestors were wise. They learned this lesson long ago. They knew what we are. He leaned closer. We are not a military force. We are not a government. We are not an empire. We are something older than all of those things. We are the people who survive. No matter what you send against us, no matter how many soldiers or ships or weapons, we will survive, and we will remember. A young woman appeared beside him, who had spent 6 weeks healing wounded fighters and teaching enemy soldiers how to farm. She looked tired but peaceful. We do not want war with your council, she said. Her voice was softer than Sung's, but no less certain. We want to live in peace. We want to raise our children and grow our food and look at the stars without fear. She put her hand on Sung's shoulder. But if you come back, we will be ready. Not just in Vietnam, everywhere, every forest, every mountain, every cave and tunnel and shadow on our entire planet. You burned our jungle and it grew back. You killed our people and more were born. You tried to break us and we became stronger. She looked directly at the recording device. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done, and that is what we will always do. Sung nodded. We return your commander now. Take him. Let him tell you what he saw. Let him tell you about the tunnels and the shadows and the music in the night. Let him tell you why your ancestors wrote that law. He stepped back. And then make your choice. Send more ships if you want. Send more soldiers. Send your entire fleet. It will not matter. This jungle has been waiting for invaders for 1,000 years. It can wait 1,000 more. The recording ended. The council chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Elder rose slowly from his seat. His crystalline body seemed heavier than before, as if the weight of what he had witnessed pressed down on him. "The vote is simple," he said. "We can send more forces to Earth and continue this war, or we can accept what our ancestors knew and leave the humans in peace." A young delegate stood up. His species had only joined the council a few hundred years ago. They had not been present when the law was written. "We could destroy them from orbit," he said. "Burn their entire planet. No more jungle, no more tunnels, no more humans." Looked at him. "You could try," he said. "Others have tried before. The humans have a saying, 'What does not kill us makes us stronger.' If you burn their planet, the survivors will rebuild, and they will come for you, not with ships, not with armies, just with patience and memory and a hatred that will outlast your entire civilization." He turned to face the full council. "I have lived for 12,000 years. I have seen species conquer galaxies. I have seen empires that ruled 1 billion worlds. And I have seen all of them fall, eventually, because they forgot one simple truth." He paused. "It is not the strong who survive. It is those who adapt. It is those who remember. It is those who never ever give up." He pointed at the image of Sung, and frozen on the display. "Look at them. They have no armor. They have no starships. They have nothing but wooden tools and underground tunnels and the knowledge passed down from their ancestors. And they defeated the greatest military force in the galaxy." He sat down. "The vote, please." The vote was unanimous. Earth was declared a forbidden world. No council species would ever attempt to invade it again. The law would stand forever. Far away on a small blue planet, a young man named Sung sat by a fire with his friends. The war was over. The aliens were gone. The jungle was already growing back over the burned places. Sat beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. She was exhausted, but she was smiling. "Do you think they will come back?" she asked. Sung looked up at the stars. They seemed different now, not distant and cold, but watchful, waiting. "Maybe," he said, "someday. And if they do—" He put his arm around her. "Then we will be here, just like we have always been, just like we will always be." Sergeant Dew walked over and sat down across from them. He pulled out his wooden flute, the simple instrument that had haunted so many enemy nights. "Any requests?" he asked. Sung thought for a moment. "Something peaceful," he said. "Something to help us remember why we fought." Dew nodded. He raised the flute to his lips and began to play. The melody drifted out over the jungle, soft and sweet. It spoke of home and family and hope. It spoke of rice fields and mountain streams and children playing in the sun. It spoke of a people who had never been conquered and never would be. Above them, the stars watched in silence. And the jungle, old and patient and eternal, listened and remembered. And he did not know that those people had been waiting for invaders like him for a very, very long time.